Hey everyone, so welcome to Runong. We've got the David Bonifacio, entrepreneur, CEO, father, husband, artist, right?
Well,
Well, you dabble in
failed
that.
artist. Yeah.
so a
I
man,
only I only post for nudes now.
so a man of many things and many interests, right? And of course, it's always quite controversial. With your thoughts, I read your blog, I follow your posts. So to those that don't know, I actually just called David a troll yesterday because he was being sarcastic about a lot of things, but in a very witty and intelligent way. And he actually made a lot of sense. But, given the generation now of how people are easily triggered and offended, I found it very funny. So, welcome to the show, David.
Hey,
And we talked about it, like what are we gonna talk about today? And so it's gonna be mistakes, failures, right? Again, offending people, the offenses, and fuck ups. So yeah, I mean, I'm so
so we
down
have
for that.
like 10 hours to talk about
Yeah,
all of this.
yeah,
It's a long
yeah.
list.
Yeah. And I'm down with that because again, yun ang problema sa Pilipino, 'di ba? Yung we don't really want to talk about. I think generally people don't want to talk about their failures. We were brought up in a society wherein bawal ka magkamali, kailangan maayos at ginagawa, kailangan successful ka. And there are things that have been established, right? By our parents, by our families, by our friends. This is what success is or should be. This is what it's like. Oh, you're not supposed to fail this subject. Oh, you're not supposed to lose this job or whatever. Parang ganon. So, that kind of um, environment has, really made us not want to talk about anything into that context. So, Runong actually, that's why when you messaged me when you told me that you want to talk about it, I was like, shit, yes. Kasi yun yung reason ng Runong.
Well, also because I have nothing else to talk about,
Well,
right?
great. Great. I mean,
We're gonna
pare,
talk about like
pare,
success.
kasi pare, sa totoo lang, parang even the most successful people, right, would have a shitload of those failures, of those fuck ups, right? And sagasa, like offending people and whatnot, diba? It just turns out that they're not positive now. Like they were
Or
whatever.
people don't know enough, right? I
Sure.
think it's usually we just don't know enough about them. I mean, if you took anyone in the universe and stuck a GoPro to follow them 24/7, right? Like, yeah, right. You're
Yeah.
gonna think this person's awesome. I mean, like, impossible. Maybe there'll be like one day, but I'd be super surprised, right? If you did like, and even worse, if you had a way of putting like a sensor in our thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Like, like, yeah, right. You didn't have a bad thought, or yeah, right. You didn't have an envious thought, or a pride and like proudful, So I think, yeah. So I think that's why I like, not to say that mistakes are okay. I think that's stupid. But some people say mistakes are okay. No, they're not. That's why it's called a mistake, right? But I think I think what is important is that mistakes happen, right? And there's a really good Bible verse, right? And this is why people end up thinking I'm a pastor like you, which I'm not, right? Wouldn't I'll never make the cut. But it goes something like, a righteous man falls down seven but rise up eight. It's something like that, right? And and what it actually reminds us is even righteous people fall,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The fact that the guy fell 7 times,
Yeah.
right? Diba? Sometimes one time parang galit na galit tayo, right? Oh, my life sucks, right? This is like, this guy is like, you know been falling over and over, but the whole idea is this person never stops trying,
Yeah.
right? They keep trying. So I think, yeah. So I think that's why it's a great topic to talk about. I'm definitely more experienced at mistakes than success, for sure, right? Um, but at the same time, I really come to value the mistakes in my life, and really have a very different approach to, we were just chatting earlier, right, about some of the dumb stuff we've done, and for me, it's like the more I think about life, the more I just own up to it,
Mm-hmm.
and the more I actually am grateful for it. Versus, oh, I re you know like I mean, I can't say that I don't have any regrets, right? But I can say is that at least I had a good time, you know. And I think a bigger regret would be, you know, you ended up doing so well in someone else's game.
Yeah.
That would be those are my regrets, right? Now, but versus like I made a mistake, doesn't bother me so much anymore. Yeah.
But what do you think fuels that? No, kasi again, for the majority, and even us to a certain degree, I mean, we experience that also, di ba? Na yun nga, parang not wanting to make mistakes, not wanting to take risks, taking that safe path. Again, your blog mentioned about yung security, our sense of security, like what's it defined or based on? What is fueling that? Parang ano ba term doon pare? Parang takot tayo eh. Takot eh. Parang ganun. Generally, we're scared. And why is that?
I mean, like from a very basic need, right? We want to survive,
Mm.
right? Like from a species, like from a very basic need, we want to survive. So that's normal. But I think you want to start applying kind of like hopefully higher order thinking to your basic needs, right? Where and so when you say, okay, I want to survive, that's why we're afraid. I think because we don't try and objectify what we mean by risk or fear, right? Or something like that's risky, right? Someone will say entrepreneurship is risky. Okay, is it any more risky than having a job? Why? Right? Well, at least there you have a monthly salary, right? They'll say something like that. Okay, but your fate isn't in your own hands, right? So if you think about it, yes, to an extent, working for a company with a lot of money is potentially less risky, right? But it's also like now, I don't think it's less risky for a lot of people in the pandemic. They're actually having to go the entrepreneurial route,
Yeah.
right? Which is, even though it's risky, it actually is less risky than trying to go out there look for a job right now, right? So in other words, it's not to say that one is less risky than the other. It's people need to think about what are they afraid of. I'm afraid. I'm worried, right? For example, a lot of people will say, one of my fears is never having financial security. And you ask them like, what's financial security, right? How much is financial security for you? Is it 100,000 a month, 200,000 a month, a million a month, right? There are people who are making like, in the US, $500,000 a year who aren't financially secure, right? That's a moving target. And there are people who are, monks who are financially secure, right? And so all of that to say, I think it's natural to have fear, but it takes wisdom, not simply to get to a point where you have no fears, but I think even better to get your fears to a point where you can think about them and chew on them and right or there's like now there's so many fears, right?
Yeah.
Like like when we were younger, what were our fears, right? Like what were our fears, right? I wasn't afraid of getting mobbed on Twitter, right? Like I was afraid of like
Be
missing a
canceled.
layup, right?
Be
Because I was
can-
not a very good basketball player. Yeah. And then but our fears were actually simpler,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I think it's natural to have fear, but I think it's important for people to learn that, hey, wait a minute, I can process this in a way
Yeah.
that's better. Yeah.
Yeah. Kasi yun nga, I like your point eh, na when we were younger, missing a layup would be your fear. Actually getting chosen siguro to be part of the team, 'di ba? Parang to play would be a fear, a legit fear. Parang ganon. So it was more of acceptance. Can you play with the kids, right? Will they like you? It's more of that. And
Mm.
of course, relative to what we are experiencing as adults, I'd rather be, of course, 'di ba, in that kind of problem. But what I noticed then is that imbis na as you grow up and as you age, as you get, you learn things, right? You have a deeper understanding. Well, supposedly, you have a deeper understanding
Yeah. I
of
figure.
what happens is it gets worse, bro. It gets worse. You're more fearful. Like you now tend to think that all your emotions are real, like these are truths. You're now worried about society, or the government, or the work, or being an entrepreneur, the fears of being an entrepreneur. And yun siguro parang siguro it's like a hinanakit of mine, right? Parang, what are we doing as a people that would actually be helpful, 'di ba? But what's happening now is like this entire world is doing more harm than good because it's actually paralyzing us or making us value something that's not supposed to be there. Parang ganun. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but no, but really, it's good. I just
But
heard it.
here,
Yeah.
interesting. So, right, I think, di ba, we think that life should be this linear progression, right? Where, oh, I should be improving. Life should be improving. I should be. But if you really look at it, even in the physical, in the natural world, right, things don't go naman from disorder to
Yes.
order, right? And so our our view of how natural life should progress is actually against physics, right? Now, that's not to say that we can't progress. That just shows that any life that's progressing is, in a sense, going against it, applying some other principles to go against it. But normally, what happens is, as we get older, one is we have more to lose, right? When you're younger, you have no kids, you have no like if you mess up, you're messing up pretty much your own life. Maybe your folks will get mad at you, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have dependents, right? So that ups the stakes, right? So that's one reason why we're more afraid. The stakes are higher, right? um, I think the second thing that happens as when we're older is we, like, almost unmindfully limit our options. When you're younger, yeah, you have all of these big things
But is that is
happening.
that is that necessarily a bad thing? Limiting options?
I think it's a I think it's double edged, right? Like, I think it's a good thing to be able to make trade offs, right? Like, when you're a kid, like, what do you want? Chocolate or vanilla? Both, right? That's how
Yeah.
kids think, right? But
Yeah.
adults, okay, I gotta make a trade off, and you try to make a wise trade off. So I think that's maturity, right?
Mm.
I think what I mean by limiting is that we 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 limit. It's almost like we limit it to conventions versus looking for first principles, right? So, what are my options for a job? We limit it to job categories or job types versus first principles, which is, okay, I want something that feeds my family. I want something that maybe is 6 hours a day. Obviously, I want something more. I would die young if I didn't have work, right?
Yeah.
But basically, first principles is, you're looking at what are the things that are the foundational principles of what you want versus looking at categories or conventions, right? Because if you say, oh, my job options are full-time or entrepreneur, then you have two options, right? But if you kind of break it down and say, hey, I can do multiple things, and all of a sudden, as long as I'm achieving the income I want, the life, then you may have something else, right?
Yeah.
So I think all of that to say, right? Like, if you were to think about, like, what was my dream job as a kid, right? I wanted to be Batman. Right now, we are investing in venture and the future of work. Parang I wouldn't have been able to describe my job now, which I'm enjoying very much, right? Well, with all of the risks and all of the stress and all, but I'm enjoying it very much. So, having said that, there is a job that exists, right? That actually meets more of the criteria that
Yeah.
we like, even before we realize. So that's why the exercise of going to the options, the first principles, opens up, right? I think the other thing that happens is, we feel like we're running out of time, right? And I see this a lot, right? It's like, I can't do that. I'm old,
Tama.
right? And I think one of the reasons why I think that that's also not necessarily logical thinking.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're older than before, right?
Sure.
But when you look at a lot of the great fortunes from a financial perspective, a lot of them are made after 50.
Yes.
And research says that a lot of the most successful startups today were started by people in their 40s, not your college dropouts.
Yes.
Obviously, there's still those guys, right? And there's still, but the bulk. And so when you actually look at um, how these, what the numbers say, right? You realize, wait a minute, a lot of my fears, or the things that I base my fears on, right? I have no options. I'm too old. I have mistakes. All of those things. Um, they're actually not. They're not
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
right? And I think even the whole point of making a ton of mistakes, right? Like, we were chatting about that. So for me, one of the best kind of like ideas and that is, from Carl Jung.
Okay.
It's the whole idea of individuation,
Okay.
right? Where you're integrating your shadow self, right? The self of you that's, I don't know. I'm not an expert, right, Carl Jung, but I guess this is my like kind of like, if anyone's watching this, right, don't go outing me on Twitter. You can out me for other stuff, right? But basically the idea is you're integrating the different parts of you,
Mm.
right? Even the trauma. So trauma that's not integrated becomes a complex. You keep going back to it as a reason for why you're behaving a certain way or why you're behaving. But trauma that's integrated actually becomes a superpower,
Yes.
you know. And so, but if you've never had trauma, right? So the question isn't whether you didn't have trauma or not. The question is how good are you at integrating it?
Yeah.
Are you? And so that's why you'll see people na parang, like, oh, how are you gonna have a good? Let's say, how are you gonna have a good marriage? You've never had a, I've never had a really long relationship, right? Like, if I figure out a way to integrate my mistakes, right? If I figure out a way to integrate those lessons, then that will be a plus, right? Or for example, my wife's divorced, right? Like people, when we were getting married, in the Philippines, divorce is even legal here, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, in other words, that could be seen as a negative. If you integrate it well, that could be a positive, right?
Yeah.
In other words, and I think that's another thing that adults are very bad at, right? They're always making these kind of like judgment calls instead of integrating and helping others integrate,
Eh, kasi the
right?
question
Yeah.
then is, ano ability nila to integrate if they don't even like recognize that it's there to begin with? Because I would argue that our
Yeah, you're
society,
denying it.
yeah, our
Yeah.
society has always like pushed that narrative na, you cannot be flawed, right? And you cannot openly talk about these things. And like even in school, so obviously I'm not a big so not big believer of, the big schools and how the curriculum is. Okay, that's a different let's not go there.
Don't
But
worry, they weren't big believers in you rin naman.
yeah, I don't know, for sure. For sure, and I love it, right? And I'm okay with it. So
Yeah.
ang point ko lang dun is yun nga, we are not also trained, educated to actually take note or be self-aware that we're actually living through these certain traumas, or we actually went through these things. Or for example, para ginugulpi ka nung siyempre nung generation natin, uso naman yung palo,
Yeah.
right? Now, syempre, that's a different story altogether, right? But like people our age, our generation, or and older would say, no, it's part of life. But again, to what degree? To what extent? Like, what kind of physical abuse did you actually, pero syempre, siguro my point here is that we were conditioned to think that it's okay. So if napalo ka,
It's okay to it's okay to be parang for your mistake to be harshly dealt with.
parang
Parang
ganon.
ganun. Yeah.
Pero, but the reality also, a trauma can and will probably
Trigger
grow
some amazing thing. Yeah. Yeah.
grow from that, right? And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, here we are in our late 30s, 40s, 'di ba? Thinking already na hindi, wala naman akong trauma eh. Because it was normalized. So how would you even integrate something that you think was normalized to begin with? Right? And
Yeah. And then you have social media where you can't. That's why I also find a lot of these like um parang so I think what you said, right? So on one end you have a society that glorifies perfection, right? No defects, no
yeah.
flaws. And then what they try to do on the other end, which I find really badoy, to be honest, well-meaning but badoy,
Yeah.
right? And this is probably gonna ruffle, but and then they try to now do some campaign na parang your flaws are normal, your love for who you are, right? It's like on one end,
Yung
the
love your
same
that
guys,
whole love yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
the same guys who were basically like spent an hour taking the best, like 1,000 photos to post the one unflawed photo will now turn around and say, because they know it's true. They know that the fact that I took 1,000 photos to get this shot, I should know that I'm really not that hot, right? You know what I'm saying? Or at least to whatever extent, right? But all of that to say, and then you go around and say, love your flaws, right? And so you're like, okay, so let's just say in 1 year, you do like one campaign of love yourself, or even 10 campaigns of love yourself, but you took 100,000 photos trying to find the 11 or 12 perfect Instagram shots. So in reality, if you were to think about like investment, right? My investment into the Love Yourself campaign versus my investment into the No Flaws campaign, right? Like obviously, right? What's gonna propagate, right? Now, having said that, I'm lucky. I'm unlucky or lucky enough, right? That even if I took 100,000 photos of myself, it's gonna look the way it's gonna look,
Wala
right?
kang
So,
11, bro. Wala kang 11
wala,
or
wala,
12.
wala, wala.
No, so
Like,
my question to that, to your point now, is that would it be a better world if the influencers would actually show their flaws? Do you think it would turn things around for the population?
I think they should be able to do whatever they want to do, right? I think it would be a better world for me if I was clear about what if I could see through stuff, right? And that's what I try to tell people. Na parang like instead of expecting people to become something, if something seems hilarious to you, then it's hilarious,
Yeah.
right? Whether everyone's saying, "Oh, this is so hot," it's hilarious, right? So the other day, right?
Yeah.
Not the other day. I'll mess up the days because they might be watching this, right? But I was sitting by the pool, right, after working out. These two people come in, like literally, I timed it right. 37 minutes since they came in, looking through the shot, and the basically boyfriend, husband, whatever, right, was like they were like going from different seats, different angles of taking photos, like and great, right?
Influencers
Not
in the wild,
that to me,
bro.
great, right? If
That's your thing.
if that's what you want to do with your morning, right? Great, right? Um, I but to me, it's like you're free to do that. I'm also free to think it's
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? It's
Yeah.
sun's out.
Yeah.
We could be working. You look like you could use some, anyway, it's like there's so many things we could be doing now instead of saying 37 minutes,
Yeah.
finding perfect angle, you know. And again, right, if that makes you happy, great, right? But let's just not pretend that that's gonna add up to
Yeah.
some,
And and
accepting
and if
world.
it,
Yeah.
if that makes you happy, 'di ba? Fine. Tama, 'di ba? The term is walang basagan ng trip, right? Kung that's what you like to do, fine. But to be honest, wag ka ring sensitive, man. If somebody makes a
If someone
joke,
doesn't like it,
yeah.
that's parang,
You're
yeah.
kasi okay. That's actually a good segue to my issue that I
You really
wanted.
want to get into trouble today.
Yeah, yeah,
Eh?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. Sayang you're here and you're one of the few people that I know that doesn't really care and would actually say things. So I would take advantage of that opportunity, bro. So, okay, what's happening now, 'di ba, is like the world is being divided. No, I mean that's how I feel. It's an either or world,
Yeah, yeah.
'di ba? Parang um you're politically you're left or you're right, you're vaxxed or anti-vaxxed, you're flat earther or whatever. Parang ganon. And you're Christian or you're not, right? I mean, even in religion, every single group now, parang ganon. You have to be either or. And I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand why you need to take a side and why you need to be fanatical about that side, that it's a perfect side. I mean, can't you just be in the middle and like assess really what's happening on both sides and then interpret it like for you and what's gonna I mean ayoko na sabihin yung common sense, bro. Mukhang matagal nang wala yung common sense, eh. Matagal nang ano yun eh. So but really, and siguro kaya yun nga, that's why it's a segue kasi nga it's actually doing more harm again to us as a people, as a society. And therefore, ayan na, yung perfect world, the IG, the one shot out of 100, diba? And all of these things. Kasi nga, either you can't show your cellulite, bro. You can't show.
Dude, I have no cellulite. Sorry, man.
Oh, okay.
Nah, just kidding, just kidding.
Una-una, ayoko magkaroon ng mental image. Diba? But you can't show your double chin, right? Parang ganon, or whatever, flab or whatnot. Kasi either you're an
Dude, you
influ.
can. You can, dude. I remember like someone told me to download TikTok. Like maybe the first couple of
Wait,
videos
okay. Do you
were all of
do
these
you
like,
have an
like
account?
I have an account, but your iPhone automatically like unloads apps you don't use, right?
Okay.
So every time I want to look at it, I have to download it again because I rarely use it. But the first few ones were all of these like, um, like calorie gifted people, like jumping up and down, dancing to the
Calorie
same
gifted
same music. I don't know what
people.
the proper politically correct term is these days, right? But I'm just saying it's like parang like parang like dancing to the same song, literally the same song, maybe like 3 or 4 videos. I was like, this is it,
Yeah.
this is it,
This is the
and
future.
and even me, I was thinking like parang, what did I do in my internet history for this algorithm to think that
Nalalabas
this is
yun.
what I
Yeah,
want?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that's the truth too. Tama ka. I mean, I'm glad you're
It's
honest,
like,
David. You've been
well,
viewing.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I've been viewing. Yeah, I'm thinking now. It's like, yeah,
Kasi yun nga parang in this day and age, right? There's no more reason not to learn more, right? There's no more. The roadblocks or the hindrances to that are so low. It's just really a matter of choosing if you want to learn or not. Diba? With the platforms. I mean,
yeah. You can have more of what you want. Whatever
bro,
you want, you can have more of it.
bro,
Yeah,
diba parang in this day and age where mostly YouTube educated, like I mean, you could use that. And I don't. By the way, I don't advocate not watching Netflix or whatnot, no. But I would say na bawasan mo lang ng konti yung oras mo sa Netflix or sa whatever K drama, and maybe you can just listen to a show or read something that could actually contribute to your
and to me,
growth.
like if that's what you want to do with your life, great, right? I think great, but I think on
Sorry,
the
sorry. I
flips,
have to stop you.
yeah,
Parang, alam mo, when you say some, may ganun kang disclaimer, I see
yeah.
through you, bro. So,
No, no, no. I really mean that. I really, really mean that. I think what I'm gonna say though is that, like, for example, right? If one guy wants to work out and another one doesn't want to work out, wants to eat like hot dogs and chips all day, right? The guy who wants to eat hot dogs and chips all day shouldn't be mad that the guy who wants to work out is fit and healthy and running outside. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, the guy who's working out shouldn't be mad
yeah.
that the guy wants to eat hot dogs and chips. And the two of them shouldn't be arguing about who's fitter.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's possible that the guy is eating hot dogs and chips all day is happier than the guy working out. It's
Sure.
possible,
Sure.
right? So for me, all of it is, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I think what I don't like is when you start to try and kind of like, you know, um, let's lower the bar for everyone. Like let's like
Yeah.
some of you are
Yeah, yeah,
studying,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then because people aren't passing their tests, you're gonna curve the score, right? For the ones that aren't. And so that's super popular today, whether that's money or fitness or health or any of those things, right? Um, and then they call it diversity, they call it, right? And I think it's just parang wala nang standard, right? So I'm thinking, so on one end, yeah, I'm all about, freedom, right? Go, you don't want to work out, don't
Yeah.
work out, right? But don't be jealous
Oh,
when someone who's working out is getting the benefits of working out, and don't try to limit them or say in the Philippines it would be like, diba, parang stream ka naman, sobra ka naman, right? Parang it's like, diba, you're not gonna get drunk anymore. Parang it's like, okay, right? How did that become a bad thing, right? Yeah.
Yon. Parang, so diba we have that, that group think approach, diba? Wherein automatically what the majority is doing is the right thing, right? And what the minority is doing is the wrong thing. I mean, it or is frowned upon or is niloloko ka na, 'di ba? Parang ganon. So, I'll say something very controversial. So,
Okay, this is
vaccines.
Warren,
Oh, this
not
is
me.
me. This
Yeah, this
does
is
not
Warren. Yeah.
reflect in any way yung point of view ng guest ko, right? So, for example, vaccine. So, number one, I'm fully vaccinated. Do I agree? No. But I am fully vaccinated.
You don't agree with the mandate.
Yes, it's parang
Yeah.
I don't agree with the literature and how it's being presented as the end all, it's the savior and everything because
Yeah,
there's
because it's not true.
it's
Yeah.
so that's
I'm
David.
vaccinated also.
So that's
No,
David Bonifacio. So
no.
I
Oh, here,
okay.
right? I'm vaccinated,
Yeah.
right? And I actually encourage people to get
Yeah.
vaccinated. Okay, that's my stance. But I do not like coercive, right?
Yan. Yan,
Vaccination,
yan, yan,
right?
yan, yan.
And second is, funnily enough, everyone I know who's gotten COVID recently is vaccinated.
Yeah. So
That's just the fact.
So-
I'm not saying that means people shouldn't get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
is the fact is pretty much everyone I know currently
Yeah.
who has COVID or gotten COVID recently was
Yeah.
vaccinated.
Yeah.
So, so if anything, I tell people you still need to be careful,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're vaccinated.
So ito nga yung
But that kills the narrative, right?
yeah. So ito yung issue ko, right? So parang I have opinions and but I'm not like forcing it or shoving it on anyone, right? Like anong kung issue mo sa vaccine? Kasi pucha, mRNA yan eh, pare. Hindi mo naman alam kung anong gagawin sa'yo yan eh. Diba? There's not enough data, there's not enough science, and blah, blah, blah. So, at the same time, so I'm fully vaxxed, and I take ivermectin, right? So,
You're the Joe Rogan of the Philippines, man.
but,
Joe Runong.
Joe Runong, ako, ang point ko lang, sige, since my mom will probably watch this, but I'll say it. Nung bata ako, nagda-drugs ako, at nag-aalak ako, and even now,
That escalated quickly.
and now we still eat trash, right? That greatly affect our health. And here comes a drug that has done wonders for another disease, right? And and they're saying na may benefit or pwede, right? Pwede mo sabihin na it's not enough data or whatever, fine. But it can help. In the same way that a vaccine also can help. So I'm like, I'm taking both. Right? So I got COVID. Diba? So I got the Omicron. So I recovered from the Omicron.
Recently.
Yeah. So I was the stupid guy who got my wife infected and our toddler infected too. But kasi ang point ko naman din, tama na eh. Tama na tong control. Tama na tong... I mean, obviously, whatever you guys are thinking and planning is not working. It's not working. You want to go to Israel with 4 shots? That didn't stop anything from happening. I mean, like...
Yeah.
Diba, parang,
I think all of the advanced countries today are just saying it's an endemic. Right? That's the...
Doon na talaga ipapunta, right? And
yeah.
Ako yun nga, going back, is that now I'm being labeled as, this anti-vaxxer, anti-vaxxing guy. And I'm like, no, I'm not anti-vax. I have issues with vax, but I'm not anti-vax. Again, I'm fully vaccinated. Why do you have to now, just because I have a question or a concern, why would you now shove me, like push me?
Yeah, people are mentally lazy, right? They don't like nuance.
I like that.
They don't lazy. Yeah. Parang it's like they want lazy labels. That's why they don't get nuance, right? They're quick to judge.
Yeah.
And that's why they're also quick to judge themselves. They're quick to feel bad about their life because they're quick to judge others.
May quick to be experts. Doon ako nagagalit, bro.
Well, my Twitter, like last year, 2 years ago, diba? Because I said something else. But I was like, but what I was gonna say about that is that's why I really think, right? It's talked about a lot on YouTube and like business people and like leaders. First principles is super important to teach people, right? Not conventional wisdom, not common sense, not dogma.
So kaninong responsibility yan?
It's the individuals, right? So to me, like it's important for parents to like encourage that in their kids, right? Ask questions, ask why. Ask those endless whys that kids like to ask, right? Like your kid will be like, why is the sky blue? And you're like, you explain it, right? The refraction of the light and all these things. And then your kid goes, what's refraction? And then you explain it. Parang you encourage that, right? Because then what happens is like, people are able to, like realize that, I can dig deep until you end at the point where there's a principle. So for example, right, the thing that people want to argue about vaccines, but the first principle of vaccines is health, right? And so we need to start out with health. What is healthy, right? Is staying home, vaccinated, sedentary life healthy? No. So in other words, right? In other words, the important thing is to get people thinking about health, not vaccines, right? And so, for example, like a lot of people think that they are promoting good health simply because they are, outing people who are not vaccinated, right? Like health is very, like for me, the way I define my personal health, right, is that I have high energy, that I am pain and disease free, okay, and that I am functionally excellent, right? In other words, like for the functions, physical functions I need to do, right? I need to be excellent, right? So for me, that's in other words, if I'm not trying to be a weightlifter, right? Like a bodybuilder. So I don't need that,
Yeah.
right? Because that's not what I'm trying. Like I want to be able to run or whatever. And so given that, if I'm feeling lethargic, not I don't have the energy, then I look, okay, what am I doing that's causing me not to be, higher? But so people have to define what is healthy, right? These things.
Yes.
So not having COVID is not healthy. It just means you don't have COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of people think, no, I'm doing it for health. You're not healthy, right? You're not,
Yeah.
right? You're not healthy. You can barely stay awake past
Yeah.
lunch, right? You're not healthy, right? And I think that's where, and that's not wrong. It's for you to figure out like how does that. So all of that to say, I think again, it's always good to go to first principles. For example, when I was raising money the first time, right? Classic case for entrepreneurs. It's like, you start feeling bad that your parents just didn't write you a check, for like $1 million to start your business, right? And you're like, you see some friends and their parents did exactly that, right? And you're like, well, see, like
Yeah.
the world's unfair, right? The rich get richer. And then when I got my head out of that kind of like that tunnel, right? And I said, wait a minute, okay, what are the first principles of what they have? They have a relationship that had the resource. Okay, who are my relationships? In other words, if I limited to parents with money, then my options in life are limited to parents with money,
Yeah.
right? But if I expand it to no, this is not about the label of parents. It's about having relationships with resources willing to bet on you.
Yeah.
And then so, okay, how do I get that? You can get that by birth. You can get that by me. And then when you look at the data, you look at a lot of these successful founders, they didn't start out with that way. They may have had a parent. Some of them had that, right? Mark Zuckerberg, like Bill Gates, where their parents invested in them.
Yeah.
But they still had to go out and raise money outside.
Yeah.
They still had to build that. And when I started getting my head out of that, like, that envy, right? Or even that very labeled view of, and then start looking at the first principles, like, no, I need to build relationships, right? I need to be of high value to those relationships as well. Then all of a sudden the thing that I thought I didn't have, I had, right? So I think again, like, and that's why sometimes people are so lazy mentally, and part of it is because like they're taught to think that way, right? Memorize this, all of those things, not to challenge. Um, Now, whether it's someone else's fault, it's our personal responsibility to figure that out, because the consequences of thinking that way is our own, right? In other words, whether you believe the health authorities that by staying home eating chips and all of that will make you healthy, it's your body that's going to break down, not theirs, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's everyone's individual responsibility, right? But all of that to say, it always has to go back to like, what's this about, ba? Right? If it's about health, let's like this morning, right? I ran, right? Um, and I had to run with a mask because that's the rule. Is that healthy?
No.
Right? So that's the question. So if this is about health, right?
It's doing more
Then
harm.
and I think that's where like people I think have to think more for themselves, and then sometimes what happens is the people who are independent thinkers look like criminals or pasaway, right?
Yeah.
Or wrong,
Yeah.
like because it's just people aren't thinking first principle, they're thinking convention. No, the rule is wear masks. Government knows what they're doing, right? So wear masks, right? Obviously, like, I could be wrong, because like if you look at most of our government officials anyway, right? They're the epitome of health if you look at them, right? No, just kidding. Yeah, they really take
Alam
health
mo,
seriously.
alam
Yeah.
mo, I don't know if you're doing it on purpose. Like you're saying like words that trigger me. So now government has triggered.
At
It's
least at least we know you're a millennial, because you're easily triggered.
you're a millennial. What are you talking about? You're
Yeah, but
part.
I'm not easily triggered,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah.
No, because I just like, it's very rare for me to talk to people or to have conversations with people. Na yun na nga, parang you can just really be open about it. And you can like
Yeah.
and you be comfortable in disagreeing, right? You be comfortable in questioning, 'di ba? So, ikaw pare, have you always been this way? I mean, well, number one, your family, right? Ilan ba pastor? Like your brother is a pastor, right?
Yeah, and my
And
dad,
and your
yeah.
dad, right?
Yep.
And ikaw, yun nga, you don't qualify as you won't make the cut,
Yeah, no
right?
way. Yeah.
So in your
Even if I wanted to.
so in your household, right? Ganyan, I mean, yung like how independent you're an independent thinker, right? And you're not lazy at all in trying to expand what you know. You're not I don't it you give me the impression that you're also not afraid to be wrong. Right? Na parang okay lang. Okay lang ako na mali. Basta I'll learn from it. Parang ganun. Is what got you there?
I think there's many people are like that. I think at home, like definitely the conversations are lively.
Okay.
You know, I imagine like telling, like for example, like me and my younger brother would be pro legalizing weed,
Yes.
right? And then obviously everyone will probably not be, right. Or me, I married a divorced woman, so I'm pro legalizing divorce, right? And that won't necessarily be the case for others. Um, that's a good example, right? So for example, my dad, when I made that decision, he was like, "Buddy, it's your decision, man. It's your life, it's your decision. I just want to make sure that you enter it with eyes wide open."
Yeah.
Right? That was his stance. And it was even funny because I remember what he told me. He goes, "Well, you know what? Um, if your goal was to complicate your life, you just did, right?" And you're like laughing and laughing about it, right? So there's that kind of like that openness to these things. But obviously there's certain perspectives we have that worry them and like concern them and maybe even offend them. And then they'll also tell us, right, their opinion. Some of these things like are offensive, right? Like I remember many times I would be dating, someone, and my mom would be like, "David, you're just dating her for all the wrong reasons." Right? Like no one wants to hear that. I'm like, "No, I'm not. I think she's awesome." And then she'd be like, "Yeah, right." But I'm very happy that someone told me that, right?
Yeah.
Or there's so many things like that, right? That it was a bit like calling each other out was normal in
Mm-mm.
a sense. So we all got used to it. But at the same time, you had to think for yourself, you know. So I think that's one. But I think the real reason is just really admitting that I have so many mistakes,
Mm.
right? That it's pointless, and I'm gonna make more mistakes, right? That it's pointless to think like I'll never make it. It's pointless to try to avoid it. It's pointless to it's like that's not the game, right? Like in other words, it's like I'm gonna miss shots.
Yeah.
So it's pointless to worry about my field goal percentage. I want to focus on winning the game, regardless of my field goal percentage. So if improving my field goal percentage helps me win the game, great. But I could care less about the field goal percentage as long as we win the game. And funnily enough, the more I focus on winning the game, the more the field goal percentage improve.
I have a
Right?
question.
So
I have a
yeah,
question to that.
yeah.
Where does playing the right way come in? 'Di ba? Parang kasi you
Good
can
point. Yeah, what is the right way? Yeah.
we can argue na what if you don't focus on winning? What if you just play the right way, quote unquote the right way, and doing that will eventually lead to winning. So I mean, what's your take on that? I
I think
mean,
the first thing, right? And I'm not an expert on life, right? Kaya nga I volunteered failures, para,
yeah.
someone can't look at this show 10 years from now and says, "I followed that show and look what you losers did." My wife hates me, my kids hate me, and my business sucks.
Tayo na yung dalawang yun.
Yeah. And then we'll be like, well, did you have fun? And then no, so I think the first thing is that, when I was talking about individuation, right? I think I think it's really important to remember that one of the parts of the fun of life is being able to, in a sense, create your game. I don't know if you saw that on my Instagram because I've been reading Ecclesiastes, right? So it's funny. I've been reading Solomon and Nietzsche, right, this whole month,
Ganda
and
ng
so
combination mo, ah.
yeah, dude, it's amazing, right? But the thing that they keep talking about in both their, and I'm not reading it necessarily whole books, right? I'm reading
Sure.
like through the ideas, right? Um, but you know how Solomon talks about how everything's meaningless, and Nietzsche kind of says the same thing, right? And a lot of people seemed to think that that's what he was espousing, na parang like everything's meaningless. But what they were both really saying is that you have to live as if you're infusing meaning to the things you do. That's like my take on it, right?
Mm.
And so I find that and like this is very cheesy, but great, right? It's just cliche to say, right? Line from The Little Prince where you have they were saying is that about the rose. I don't know if you remember that story where he was saying is that there are hundreds and
Of roses,
thousands of
yeah.
roses, but what makes this rose special is the time I wasted on it. In other words, it's like there's many kids,
Yeah.
but I love my kid.
Yeah.
That's my kid, right?
Yeah.
That it's his ass I wipe, right?
Yeah.
I've like played Nintendo with him, right?
Yeah.
I've said sorry to him, right? These things. And so, and I think that, like, for me, that's been the most freeing thing, right? Because all of a sudden, your score is not externally placed on you. So the game you get to play is the game of your own design.
Yeah.
Obviously, there'll be people who'll be like, I hate your game, David. I'm like, great, you don't have to play with me. It's fine, right? And it's fine,
Yeah.
right? There are people who are very successful and very happy who don't agree with my game, and I'm happy for them,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's fine. There's,
Yeah.
like I have like thousands of friends on Facebook, and statistically, I think we're only able to really keep track of 150, right? So if you think about it, I have too many friends, like logically speaking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all of that to say, right? Like being able to mark out what that game is, and so I think the real important thing there is having a lot of clarity, right, around what's your mission, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't say that in a cheesy way, in the sense that, like, I didn't start out with a clear mission for myself.
Yeah.
I did start out with a clear responsibility, right, of what I needed to do. So like again, yeah, it's funny that I keep quoting the Bible. Actually, I am better at quoting it than following it. It's true though, right? But like there's a story of David, right, before he fought Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
What was he doing, right? He was just doing his responsibility for
Yeah.
his family, right? Delivering cheese to his brothers, following his dad's orders. And it's in his faithfulness, right, and being responsible, that he was given the opportunity of a lifetime. And the opportunity of a lifetime was actually the crisis of a lifetime, right? And so I find that people who are very responsible, but then have the foresight, and the creativity to attack the challenge of a lifetime, then end up realizing, then they get launched, right, in some
Yeah.
new trajectory, that that wasn't a pattern of someone else's success pattern, right, or something like that, right? So I think all of that to say, I think it really starts out with that clarity, right? Now, for me, clarity means, being clear about your mission or your responsibility. While you don't know your mission, some point your mission kind of clarifies, right? But I think the other thing is being clear about who your customer is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or who are the people in your life that you really want to focus on providing value to.
Yeah.
So your family, your closest friends, your parents, your investors, your partners, and so the people who follow you, right?
Yeah.
So I could care less if some guy or girl on Twitter says, David, you're ugly, you suck, you should go to hell, right? I don't care, right? But if, let's just say, one of my investors says, hey, David, I need to talk to you, I care, right? Because that is one of the people that I've identified in my life. Or, for example, if my wife says, hey, David, right, you're an ass, I care, right? Or at least I try to care. No, I care, right? Because so all of that. Or, for example, if my son says, Dada, can you help me, right? I care, because that's clear.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm also clear about what value I can bring to them, because I can't give them everything, right? And I think this ties into even views on family, right? Where, like, I'll tell my kid, right? He'll be, can I buy this computer game? I'm like, no, right? Like I was like telling my son, what number is that? 5. What's the next number? 9. Then what's the next number? Dot. What's the next number? 9. What's the next number? 9. 59.99. No, you're not buying that. Dollars. You like, are you insane? You're not buying that, right? And he goes, why? Like, wait for a sale, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, it's like, here's what I can afford, here's what I can't afford.
Yeah.
Right. And I made the mistake of overindulging and all of that. And you pay the price. It's my choice to overindulge, right?
Yeah.
But all of that to say is clear about the customer, about the value you provide that customer, right? And then the last one is, when you're clear about your mission and responsibility, and you're clear about the people that mean the most to you, right, and the value you want to give them, then you can be very clear about what your priority outcomes, let's say for the year, for the month, for the quarter can be. So, for example, right, like I've lived in the same place since I was 21, right? I was single. Now I'm married. I have a kid. Have not upgraded at all. Obviously now my wife and I, right? We want to get a bigger place. We have a growing family, right? But it was not a priority outcome, right? So even though we could have maybe upgraded and all of those things, it wasn't a priority outcome. And there's nothing wrong with it, And so I think that's where I'm telling people, so when people would tell me, you need a bigger place for your family, right? I would ask them why, and normally they'll say, "Is of course you want the bigger place for your family." I'm like, why? Right? Because your family wants more space. And like, space for what? Right? To move around. Move around doing what? And I'm not trying to be obnoxious. I'm just trying to say that, like, if after all of those questions it ends up that we do need a bigger place, like we do now,
Sure.
right? Then you do it.
Yeah.
But if at the end of it you don't need it, then you don't need it.
Yeah.
Even if other people think you need it, right? And I think that's where I guess that's where that concept, that framework of thinking that way, that first principles, or even thinking about there's another framework that I think is really interesting, is the fallibility, right?
Fallibility. Okay.
Where basically, the right answer is the one with the best explanations, at least the most current best explanations. And if better explanations come out proving something else, then you switch.
Yeah.
Right. And so we learn, right? Like, I thought this was a great way to live. There are better explanations for better ways to live, then you adjust and you're adapting. Which is what humans have been doing, right? So I don't know if I just kind of blabbed out, but I think all of that to say that's just kind of how my brain works
And
with going through life. Yeah.
no. It's great kasi nga parang what I'm hearing then also is number one from those philosophers, right, that we were referencing earlier. I don't know if you call them philosophers, but anyway, yun nga, parang 'di ba everything's indifferent. It's the meaning that you attach to it. It's the emotion that you attach to it. It's how you respond or react to something that puts meaning. Like I mean, sabi ko nga parang it's like in the corporate world, mali ba mag-lay off ng tao, ng hundreds of people, 500 people, 1,000 people? And my answer to this depends on who you're asking, right?
Yeah.
If
I mean, we had to do that, right?
your story, 'di ba, na parang you really had to clean the house. But again, syempre, if yung tao yun ang layoff, that person may have a different perspective, right? Or
Yeah,
interpretation
yeah.
of
And
what
you can
happened.
understand if they
Yeah,
hate you after, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And parang ang siguro ang point ko doon is that yun nga, you have to put in the work. You have to act and do something to be able to attach or associate the right thoughts or emotions to events in your life, no, or to opportunities in your life. And actually, ito yung issue ko. Yung start with why. So, I mean, it's great. It does make a lot of sense. And I would argue that, no, tama naman talaga. But the problem is, are you able to actually, are you that self-aware that you actually trust yourself when you figure out what you think your why is? Because that's a very broad, complicated concept. The why, the purpose, and the meaning in your life. No, and when you were blabbing, like I actually loved it because yun nga, parang you were just really driving at moving, acting, doing something. Parang ganun yung naririnig ko. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's what I was hearing, and it actually.
And if you're wrong, correct it.
Yeah,
right?
yun na nga. And there's only one way of learning, and it's doing. Right? It's acting on it. I mean, as much as we read, we like enjoy reading or watching videos and whatnot, kulang yun eh. Diba?
Yeah, and I think people are getting fat, right? Like mentally fat. I mean, like, okay, I don't know what the politically correct.
Parang
So,
tinamaan ako dun sa getting fat. Saka,
well, not, let
well,
me put it this way, right? Let's talk about, let's say, the
yeah.
retrenching, right?
Yeah.
So this is a good example of, because I like what you said, right? In other words, it's not about should I do this or this, as if one is the right answer. Part of what you should do is put thoughtfulness to whatever you do decide, right? So, for example, should I retrench? When we looked at our numbers, I mean, we're supporting startups, right? and we were burning money prior to the pandemic, right? And so even if we wanted to keep them, we couldn't, right? And so the thoughtfulness first was like, do we do this? What can we do? Let's do everything in our power. But as soon as the pandemic hit, the leadership team met, right, and decided. And I'm very lucky to have really, really I'm just so lucky. Like sometimes I read these like Forbes magazines and I see these really great leaders, 30 under 30, or you see like they're featured in the business section or online, like billionaire, like really awesome leaders, right? Or super rich. I'm super lucky to have people better than me. Like it's the opposite, right? All of them should be there. And for some reason, like we just enjoy working together. The group decided, right, that we were gonna have to make cuts, and we start with us. So literally, the whole group took a 50% pay cut, and then I got zero pay. Thank goodness I had some savings, right? Because we said we already know we're gonna have to cut jobs, but we cut from the top, right?
Wild.
And some people had to leave because they couldn't afford it and all of those things, right? I'm not saying that's the one right answer. What I am saying is based on our thoughtful process, that's what we ended up with, right? And then now it's so amazing, right? I was talking to our leaders about it, and what we realized, like one of the benefits it gave us, is that our leaders can literally tell all their future employees and current employees, right, that when times were tough, they took the bullet. Every other leader will fire you before they fire themselves, right? But the leaders here can actually say that we cut our pay in half before we touched any of you. We're the opposite here. And so the cultural gains of that, I think, is just, you're going to find that down the road. So I think what all of that to say is, I'm not saying that's the only right. I'm just saying is that is the thoughtfulness that comes into the process, right? Now, in terms of moving, right, and making the mistakes, I especially in a fast changing world, right? Like who really knows, right? Who really knows, right? What happens if war breaks out tomorrow? What are you gonna do, right? Was college all of a sudden still the right decision? Was getting your master's still the right decision? Was investing in crypto the right decision? Who knows? Right. And so I think, having said that, is the toolkit you need is not so much how do I predict, right? How do I become a prophet, but more, right? How do I adapt, right? How do I adapt mentally, physically? And that's why I was saying is a lot of people are fat is because mentally, at least, is that our brains are like any other system, right? There's a metabolism, right? And basically what it does is it takes in, let's say, calories, right? And then it processes all of that and turns it into energy, right? If you have more calories coming in than you're using, it starts storing, and that's what becomes fat, right? And so if you have a lot of knowledge coming in, but you're not taking risks, not applying, you're not finding ways to apply it. You're just reading book after book, blog after blog, all of that, right? Then what's happening is your brain is going to get clogged up, just the way your heart gets clogged up, all of that, because you're gonna have so much information, right? And so in many ways, like when I encounter people like that, I tell them stop reading books, right? Focus on one thing, one principle, and just focus on applying that one thing, right? And stop eating, right? And just like start doing, it's like your version of going for an hour walk or something like that versus like running a marathon, right? So I think that's what kind of gets in the way of the decision making process, right? Yeah.
Saka parang focusing on what first, going back to the why, no? It it actually helps. It's more helpful. Kasi what happens is if you can't figure out your why, the tendency is you're paralyzed. The tendency is you get fat, right? Because you're not moving.
Yeah, moving, yeah.
Because you're thinking.
You're waiting to figure it out. Yeah.
Wait, I have to think about this. I have to put time into this. It's important because you have to start with why. But what's not being said as much is that by being mission oriented, to your point, diba, na what? So that's the what. What are you gonna do? What do you wanna be? The action towards that will start to unravel a lot of, like open up things for you. Then it can lead to your why. Right? Na parang,
Yeah, yeah.
kasi
It's
yun na
like
nga,
it's not linear,
yeah.
right? Like I need to do this, I
Yung,
need to do this, I need to do
so,
this, right? Yeah.
yung discussion points natin kanina na, yun na nga, it's either or it's linear. Yun nga, it's so unnatural because ultimately nga, there's no perfect formula. It depends on the situation. I mean, if you are actually blessed with that kind of clarity and at 15 years old, you were able to determine your why. God bless you. Right?
Yeah, and funny enough, you'll meet some people na parang, I never had a choice. I
yeah.
had to play golf since I was 15. It's like,
But,
diba?
yun na nga, kasi iba-iba yung situation eh. Iba-iba yung karera. Iba-iba yung opportunities. Iba-iba yung where you're at. And here's another thing. People, I think, are under the wrong impression that when you figure out your why, that's set for life. No, that why is for a particular period in your life. And to your point nga na parang yung being, it boils down to being stuck eh, 'di ba? Of you not moving and being fat. Because you're thinking, having that fixed mindset, program na, I'm old. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And all, we're starting to believe that narrative. You said it earlier na, yun nga, we believe that life is short. Tony Robbins said that. That's actually the biggest lie. Selling the idea that life is short. It's not short.
Really?
Yeah. Parang I picked it up when I listened to him.
Dude, I'm gonna charge you for this podcast then, man. Tony Robbins charges so much.
So ang ano ko doon, ang point ko doon is kasi nga it's the narrative that we just as lazy people, we decided that's a convenient truth. I like that. It sounds good. That life is short and ganyan. But no. Like I just turned 39. We were talking about this earlier that my goal is to be a happy and healthy centenarian, 100 years old. 'Di ba? So, if my math is correct, that's 61 years to go.
Lapit na.
I mean, saang sa mundo na to, bro, would you think na 61 is short? Now, sabi mo, hindi kasi you're over,
Yeah, yeah.
you're ambitious, 100, hello. O sige, fine. 78. That's the diba? That's the average lifespan. Hindi mo na 80. Para just a bit, mas madali yung math ko ng konti. Diba? So I have 41 years. That's 41 years, bro. Like, that is not short. Now, of course,
Yeah.
something can happen. Anytime. If it's your time, I believe in that too, right?
Yeah.
These things happen.
Yeah.
Pero yun na nga, it becomes short when you're mindless, when you're aimless, when you're lazy. Because all of a sudden...
Yeah, when you want convenience, right? Like basically convenience comes from other people doing for you things, right? Doing things for you, right? So convenient truths are dangerous because that means someone did the thinking for you, right?
Yes.
Any like pretty much anything of meaningful value, right? Like for example, you can get other people to work for you. You can't get other people to work out for you. In other words, you can hire a million people to jog for you. That's not gonna translate to your jogging, right?
Yeah.
Right. In other words, when it comes to your body, soul, and spirit, right? The more inconvenienced those things are, and the more you push through those inconveniences, the healthier they all become.
Yeah.
Right. It's a total opposite of the dream life we want, where we have no worries. We have we don't have to give so much effort, right? I think one of the things there, what you said, which I think is interesting, is that there are people who literally have succeeded without knowing their why, but being very faithful, right? Just faithful at their job as a janitor, as a messenger, or as a bank president, or as a teacher.
The
right?
mastery aspect of their life.
Yeah. And in the process, they were so good at it, they learned to love it, all of that, right? For example, I remember I was listening to this real estate podcast, I think, and he was saying no one goes into real estate really like, I want to be a real estate salesperson, right? But a lot of people have succeeded, and in the process created jobs, created opportunities for their family, all that, right? Yeah. Because of jumping into real estate. So all of that to say, right, like that wasn't like my dream why, right? In fact, in my own story, right, I had to take over a company that had a lot of debt, right? I was 23. That was why I had to go back into business, right? I was already doing kind of like NGO stuff, um, had to fix it, right? And so now it's relatively fixed. I think it's been profitable, right? Past couple of years, nothing big, but at least it's out there, right? But then looking back, right? If I just focused on my why, I'd be like, fixing indebted companies begging for a lifeline is not my why, right? Like, but if I change my perspective, which is, like, but you know what, serving my family is a good why, right? And this is what it looks like. And so I think this really became a home run when my kid was born, right? Because when you're with your kid, right, you love your kid so much that you're willing to do a whole lot of things you don't love, right? Like there's just so many things about a baby that you don't love, but you'll do it because you love your kid. Diapers, all of that. I
So
mean,
good.
to be honest, I didn't do a lot of that. My wife did most of that. Like I think I did it like once. But all of that to say, there's so many things you don't like, right? About so the most meaningful things in your life will come with a lot of things you don't like, and so that's why I think that whole kind of like find your passion, if if misguided, right, will really derail a lot of
Yeah.
lives, And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, too bad they listened to the wrong guy. Yeah.
Ito nga eh. So, I have a friend, a good friend of mine. Sabi niya, oh, War, parang I wanna look for a coach. No? Sabi ko, why? Tapos parang sabi niya, no,
Life coach.
no, life coach daw. Kasi parang, a lot of people do it. It's been helpful, right? You're watching this and you're listening to that. And mukhang okay. Effective. Sabi ko, actually, I'm sure effective din yun, right? I mean, it wouldn't be an industry if it wasn't, if it wasn't driving results, right? And, but I told her, sabi ko, but you know what? Why don't you parang do it yourself muna? In a sense that consume content, learn. Like, follow certain people. For example, kasi she's a mom also. She has a career. I was like, hey, why don't you follow Mel Robbins? She talks in a certain tone that's so real, right? Very simple. Yung framing niya of things, no?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not highfalutin, right? And she won't make you feel stupid. By the way, Jordan Peterson makes me feel so stupid, right? I mean, I can only take so much of Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. Like these people are like, I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Going back to Mel Robbins, it's like listen to Mel Robbins or start looking for women that you connect with, right? Because as while you listen to them, while you learn from them, you're gonna start processing things and start connecting it with your life, relating it to your life. And when you hear their ideas or when you hear their stories, you would also start to formulate, okay nga yan, no? Uy, actually, pwede yan sa buhay ko, ah. Uy, actually, I want that. Or, I don't want that. Right?
Yeah.
So, ang point ko lang doon is, listen to them so you could be thoughtful about your opinion on what you want in your life. So, when you get into coaching, you're not just being blindly led by whatever your coach is saying, because for me that's dangerous. Because
Yep.
I'm sorry, there's also an industry of this, anybody getting a certification, right? Get completing the units and all of that and paying X amount, a lot of money, and all of a sudden they're a coach. That's not a knock on the industry. It's reality also. At the end of the day, you need to be able to have at least a semblance of what you want to stand for or what you want to live for. So
Yep.
then you can get coached effectively.
No, like any
efficiently.
industry, right? There's a good coach, there's a bad coach, and usually there's less good than bad,
And it would
right?
depend. Like a good
Like there's
coach,
good basketball players, there's bad, right?
and
There's like LeBron, there's everyone
and
else,
then saka
like
yun na
that.
nga, a good coach can be a good coach for a certain group, but can
Yep.
be a bad coach for a certain group, right?
Yeah, like if you need a shooting coach because your goal is to improve your shooting,
Yeah.
right? You're not gonna get some other coach, right? No, but like I was asked before I was speaking in this HR event, right? And then I was on the panel, and then there's always that guy or girl who'll ask like this crowd pleasing question. Like when they open forum, he'll walk up to the mic, he'll pretend like he's asking the panel a question, but really he's trying to show the crowd how smart this question is,
Yeah.
right? You can see them a mile away, right? I'm getting better at kind of like, like not looking so irritated. But but basically, one of the questions was around like, this was a very helpful discussion, and one of you mentioned life coaching, and so I just thought that would you all agree to coach all of us in this crowd, right? Like, would you be open to coaching us? And then the crowd's like, yeah, yeah, like what an idea, like, like, and then so I said like, and so they kind of asked, and the host kind of like asked the different people in the panel, like, oh yeah, like that's it, like what are your thoughts on it, right? Syempre, what's the panelist gonna say, right? The panelists are gonna say like, I mean, yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
like some
Be
politically
polite.
correct
Yeah.
answer, right? And then when it got to me, I was like, um, I really don't coach anyone unless they're in my team, right? Because I think coaching requires, like a target, right? What do I want to improve on? It requires accountability.
Yeah.
It's not just someone telling you a bunch of good ideas, right? It's really someone being accountable to you and you being accountable to them to improve their performance, right? And I find that most people don't need a life coach; they need a life, right? And so, like, how do you coach someone who doesn't even have a? How do you life coach someone who doesn't have a life? And so that's why it goes back to the less sexy thing people need, which is responsibility.
Yeah.
They need to get in the game, right? How do you coach someone who's not in the game? They don't matter, right? They live off someone else, right? And as offensive as it sounds, right? That's why, like that tweet I had, right? Where I, like, when I pray for my kid, I pray that my kid won't turn out to be some person tweeting about how unfair and unjust the world is, living rent free in my house, raiding my fridge, using my internet, right? And accusing me for not providing enough. I'm like, look at this, right? And that's something when I see it in my son now, right? I like super nip it in the bud, right? Whenever I hear him say, I'm bored, I'm like, Elijah, right? Boredom is for people who are not creative. Okay. Boredom is for people who don't use their head. Boredom, and when I hear like
How
it's
old is he?
unfair, I'm like, he's four. So, like for example, there was one time we New Year's, right? Right after New Year's,
Yeah.
right? Right after we checked out, right? We got in the car, okay, and this is gonna sound harsh to many parents, but too late. Um, and then in the car, my kid goes, while waiting for all the bags, right? He's in the car and he goes, "This is so boring, right? Like, it's like I want to do something else, right?" And I'm like, Elijah, like, can you just hear yourself? Right? Did you hear yourself? You're literally checking out of a 5-star hotel. I don't know if we considered 5-star in a post-pandemic, right? But it's like you're literally checking out of a 5-star hotel, right? You partied all night last night, New Year's, all of that, right? Like it's like you have all of this, right? We're about to go grab like a yummy meal, right? Or like in other words, and you're gonna go home to BGC, right? And you have somewhere in your head you thought it was okay to be complaining about your current situation. And I basically told him, I'm like, because that really like ticks me off. I told like, Elijah, I'm not gonna like so my wife and him, they went home and I literally like called a grab, right? And took a grab home. So I'm not riding in a car with a grumbler, and he was like,
Intense,
Dada, I'm
bro.
sorry, Dada. And I'm like, so when I got home, right, that he was like, that I won't. So now he knows, right? He knows that
Yeah.
like grumbling is not
Yeah.
allowed here, because I'm like saying is that like you can keep looking at what other people have and what you don't have, right? You can keep looking at you can have that mindset in life. Like, and the other reason why I don't want him, the main reason why I don't want him thinking like that is not because I feel bad that he's bored, right? Like obviously I'm not. I'm like, if you're bored, it's your issue, right? But the main reason is because I know that kind of consumer entitled, you know people need to make things happen for me mindset ensures that he's going to become a loser, right? Ensures that he's not going to be of value to the world. And I really don't want, there's enough people like that in the world already.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
need another one, right?
Yeah.
And so and so I always sit him down and I always tell him, like, Elijah, um like, I'm sorry for being angry, but I'm not sorry for what I was angry for. angry at, right? Right. I will never not get angry at you grumbling, right? I will never not get angry at you grumbling, right? Because even though certain things don't work out your way, okay, A, you have a very good life, and B, you can do something about it, right? You can do something about it instead. You can't. You're like, I'm whining. I'm stuck in the car, right? Like whatever, right? Open the window and say hi to everyone that passes by, right? But no
Yeah.
grumbling,
Yeah.
no whining, right? Like there's so many things you can do. Close your eyes and imagine, like swimming or something like that, right? Like that's what imagination is for, right? And all of that to say, right? It's like um, we like those are certain things we just have to not allow it,
Yeah.
and so some of these things are just like um to those formulas, right? That because I follow the formula, I don't get what I want, right? You can't, people can't think that way. And if they grow up thinking that way, I mean, it's to their own detriment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds harsh, right?
No, no,
But
no, no. It is
yeah.
harsh, and I subscribe to the same harshness. No, because like the reality is, I grew up also feeling entitled, parang to a lot of things, diba? And that didn't serve me when I encountered the challenges or the failures in my life,
You end
and
up learning it anyway,
yeah,
the hard way, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, my wife is always on my case on how tough I am to our eldest because he's a nice kid. He's 11, he's turning 12, but he's in puberty. So meaning, ito na yung ugali na lalabas na lahat, right? And you like to your point, you gotta nip it in the bud. And I'm like, and I was like joking, half joking. I wasn't really joking. I was telling my wife it's my job para magalit siya sa akin. Like, it because I'm really, I want him to grow as I won't be able to be with him the entire way, right? So we need to put the foundation in para he knows what he needs to do, right? Or what he shouldn't be doing and all of that. And he'd be able to discern all of these things. Na-realize ko din. Like, tama rin ba yun? In a sense, like, why am I being this strict or tough, right? Is it because I want him to be a great kid or be a great human being? Or is it because of my frustrations also or like my fears of him
It's a good point.
making the
And I
same,
think,
yeah.
let's say, right, like for example, right, back to the formulas, and did we do it right or did we do it wrong? What I really appreciate about my parents, and maybe this is why I'm like this, right? So whatever happens, blame them, right? But what I really appreciate about particularly my dad, right? This one, like I have so many examples in my head, right? Is my dad says sorry, you know, and so even me, like when I'll do something that's just over the top, because we all do stuff, right? It happens, right? Like we're not so so if life was simply about getting it right all the time, then everyone would have the wrong life, right? Because no one's gotten it right all the time, right? Some people look like they get it right all the time, but it's probably not the case. It's just you don't know enough about them, or you know, it's just not the case, right? Like because usually the people who are putting themselves out there trying things will make more mistakes.
Yeah.
They're just trying more, right? If you're trying more, you'll
Yeah.
make more mistakes.
Yeah.
It's math, right? So I think, particularly when it comes to that, right? Like, um, the admitting that we're wrong, right? So, for example, when I got home, I said, "Hey, I'm so sorry for being harsh," right? And then my son would be like, "It's okay, Dad.
Okay
It's
lang.
okay,"
Tindi nun,
like
bro.
that,
Like, I mean,
right?
medyo
You know,
nawawa ko dun that you can actually say
yeah.
sorry, bro.
And that's because that's how my dad, like maybe I don't know, 7 years ago, randomly, right? I'm walking. I can't forget it because I was in High Street. I was walking to a meeting. I get a call from my dad, and my dad has like the most random calls sometimes. He'll call me like at 6 a.m. like that because he knows I'm up. Then he'll be like, so he called me and goes like, "Hey, you busy?" I'm like, "No. Like, yeah, I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I'm like, "For what?" Right? And he's like saying, I noticed you were very harsh um, with Elijah, and you're harsh because I was harsh, you know. And the reason why you and your brothers
Damn.
can be harsh is because I was harsh. And you know what? I'm sorry because I don't want Elijah to be harsh. It's probably too late for you, but it's not too late for him. So
Diba,
parang it's
ang
like,
intense nun, bro.
no, so we laughed about it and all of that. And like, I'll try my best. It's like, but basically you're saying is at least be an improvement, right? At least try to be an improvement, right? And I think that's what helps, right? Because A is that, versus like saying,
Yeah.
versus like kind of like having this thing where it's either perfection or nothing,
Yeah.
right? It's either perfection or wrong. You could have this, I don't know if it's the middle that you were saying, right? But you could have this version of life where I make mistakes,
Yeah.
but in the life that I lead, in the life that I lead with others, we're allowed to correct them, right? And I think that's a less stressful life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grabe
So
yung
yeah,
story. Grabe yung
yeah.
story mo, bro. Medyo na teary-eyed ako doon, man. Kasi, no, it impacts me because I don't have that kind of humility. Like, personally. Because, again, I grew up as a tough kid. Tough environment. Kept putting myself in tough situations. So, that's my identity, really. And, like, yun nga, siguro that's why I shared kanina na parang maybe it's my fears, right? Because, obviously, yun nga yung nangyayari. And, I also don't like the version of myself when I get angry. And I feel guilty, right? To that point. But the reality also is I don't have that same humility to apologize that I went a bit overboard or I went overboard, right? I don't.
Not a bit.
Hindi, pero I mean, kasi nga pare, my father's never apologized to me. I mean, I don't say it na parang oh that I
You're not mad.
I oh,
It's just like,
oh
yeah,
yun
yeah.
siya. My mom is also not we don't say I love you, bro. Like my parents, not no, parang or hug or what. As in talagang wala kaming ganun. That's why ako when it comes to my wife and to my sons, right? My kids, I really show them the affection. Parang kasi nga I wanna be the better version. But yun na
So
nga.
that's a good answer. You just answered your own point,
pero
right?
pero nangingibabaw rin talaga yung fear ko. I think there are times, again, nobody's perfect, right? And siguro what I'm afraid of now is it's my fear taking control of, wanting to be a good father, right? The whole, they're like, di ba uso ngayon to eh, you don't raise your kids, you nurture them. Uso yun, bro. Uso. Di ba? Medyo marami ko napipick up
Buti
yun
na
eh.
lang never ako uso
So,
na.
ito ngayon yung issue ko. What does that mean? Like, I don't know what it means, bro. I mean, it sounds nice. It sounds beautiful and sensitive and loving. But I really don't know what it means. And is that really the expectation now? I mean, nurturing, right, is to provide an environment where they can flourish, they can grow, and all of that. Sorry. I know may parang may mockery yung tone ng voice ko. Pero,
I love it. I love how it sounds also, right? I wish I grew up in that household.
oh,
Yeah.
pero yun na nga, parang, I'll say it. I'll say this. Um, siguro ang biggest ano ko, this is my calling, this is my biggest frustration and fear in my life. That I'm not my kid's hero. Na hindi ako yung
Get
hero
used to it,
nila.
dude.
Yun na nga. But,
Like the natural ranking, right? It's
yeah,
like Batman, Spider-Man, right?
I have
Then maybe
choice. I
SpongeBob, then
have
you.
Batman
Yeah.
stuff. So anyway, but
SpongeBob, then you.
hindi
Yeah.
kasi pare, I was sharing this to a friend earlier. Like, I'm doing Runong and one of my videos hit 1,000 views and I just feel validated because I'm suffering from imposter syndrome. I've always been an alpha. Character. I have a loud personality, overconfident, and I didn't think that I would be so insecure about running Runo or doing Runo, and I was for the longest time. So it took me a year to finally do this, and so here I am with 1,000 views, and I'm sure it had everything to do with my guest because he's really funny as fuck. He's Red Oliero, so thank you, Red, by the way. So, ang point ko lang doon is, oh wow, it's now there's momentum, there's good momentum. So ito na yung fear ko. My fear kicks in. So what if I finally get to do what I want to do, which is do public speaking, host workshops, help people, and then there's a panel like what you experienced. And then they're gonna ask me, "Who's your hero?" And like, or who got you to where you are, or to be the person that you are. And I mean, the pageant answer is, yeah, my father. My dad has been like all these players or athletes or the people that we look up to. Like their parents had major roles in their lives, or that at least that's how what they would present it. And I'm just like afraid, bro, because I'm not gonna answer that. And
Are you
of
afraid because it's a wrong answer? Because
no,
it's
no,
a
no, no, no,
different
because no, it's
answer?
it's just in parang I guess that's the pain that I have, right? Na parang of course I want to be proud of my parents, but I'm like hindi, parang may ganung sorry mom. My mom watches this, so sorry mom. Pero again, it has nothing to do, hindi galit yun right? But I can't just like truthfully say na parang, oh, my dad was my hero and he really molded me. Like, what you just said that your dad would like call you in the randomest. My dad is random, same thing, 6 o'clock, 6:30, but will never apologize for anything. So it's always like what he wants or whatever, and that's him. I love him for that, right?
Am I your dad? Nah, just kidding.
so ito na. So yung fear ko nga of me being asked that and not being able to answer that. Tapos parang over-analyzing. You had a blog on this, on paralysis and whatever. Now I'm fast forwarding pucha to my son's life, Alonzo's life specifically, my eldest. 20 years from now, and he's going to be asked that. And like parang I really want to be his answer. Parang ganon. So what do I now need to do to be
Be his
able
answer.
to be his answer? But see, that in itself, me just like rambling now already sounds wrong. Like I can't be fixated on the idea of wanting
No,
to
I
be.
admire your candor. I think first is I don't think I'm gonna be first is I'm still my kid's hero
Hmm.
for sure.
Hmm.
Right? Maybe at about 9 that will stop, right? And then when he gets married and has kids and has to pay the bills himself, then maybe I'll become the hero again, right? Like you notice how much you admire your parents when
Yeah.
you move out, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how the
How
heck
did
did
you
they
do
make
that?
this
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you admire them,
Yeah.
flaws and all,
Yeah.
right? Then you actually end up respecting them more.
Yes. Agree.
And so knowing that, right, that's probably true for many people, right? So expecting me to be the hero of my kid between 9 to 31 or whatever, whenever he gets married, right? It's illogical, right? If it
I
happens,
like that.
great. If it
Thank you.
doesn't happen, it's like whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like great, you're a normal kid, right? But we're not the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
um so I think that's one, but I think the bigger question to ask is why, right? Like for example, like why would anyone want to be anyone's hero,
Siguro kasi,
right?
yeah. Siguro kasi, just to answer that quickly, no?
Yeah.
Is because I've changed my identity, or I've been trying to change my identity, and my priority really is to be
A good
a
dad.
good dad, a
Yeah.
great family
Yeah.
man. Talagang yun yung number, as in, that really, and it's true. It's genuinely true. That's my number one. Everything like falls like far third, fourth, not even second. Nothing close. So parang feeling ko, if siguro, I'm just thinking now, if I am the hero, it actually
that's proof.
that's the
Yeah.
validation of whatever I set out for.
I think no one can make us more insecure than our family, right? And I think the one that, because they matter so much to you, right?
Yeah.
Like, people can say all sorts of like mean things to me online, and it'll be like whatever. But my wife will say something like,
That's true.
can we afford this? I'm like, hey, like look at the budget, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
No,
she's not
it's
even
it's
like,
true.
she's not even influenced.
My
Like, it's
wife
not
can
even like,
say like the
yeah, she
mine
can say
just
anything,
yeah, and it's like
right?
it hits
Or
hard,
for
bro.
example, like, and it's a good thing, also that because my wife's very sarcastic, right? She's British, right? And so I'm also very, so it works out, right? Um, like, sometimes with my friends, like we'll chat. Like we have this one friend of ours who's still single, and then we'll be like, "Hey, this girl's hot. You should meet her," like that. And then my wife will say something like, "Look at these three hotties," right? like make fun of. But it's funny. But
Yeah.
sometimes, like that joke, right, where you come home and you're like, "Honey, I just closed $1 million deal." And then she goes, did you get the milk? Right? And you're like, weren't you listening? I just closed $1 million deal. It's like, yeah, where's the milk? We need the milk for dinner or
Yeah.
for breakfast tomorrow. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's funny, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of true in the dynamic. And so even me, right? Particularly during the pandemic, right? For example, my salary went to zero for a portion of that period, right? And so we said, since we're gonna have to live off savings, we're gonna have to cut spending, right? And so that's what we did, all of that. And so even little things where my wife would be like, can we can't do this anymore? She's not trying to be mean, but I'm like, look at this
Yeah.
ungrateful, like in my head, right? And so that was causing a lot of stress. But I think what really helped me was first admitting um, that all of a sudden I was faced with inadequacies that I never had to face, right? Because when if you're making a certain amount of money, you're a single guy, right? You own your place, you're okay, right? You're like all of a sudden you're having to divide that with
Yeah.
two other human beings, right?
Never.
And all of
It
a
never
sudden,
ends, bro.
never ends, never ends. But so I had to ask myself, right? Like, okay, like I am getting triggered because all of a sudden I can blame it on my wife's comments, right? But the reality was that I had to face my inadequacies, right? And make up for it in the bedroom. No, I'm just kidding. I had to literally I had to really face my
Yeah.
inadequacies, right?
Yeah.
Like and say, okay, I gotta figure this out.
Yeah.
And it only and it was only then that I stopped blaming, right, my the irritation on someone else and
Yeah.
started just dealing with the different inadequacies in the little ways I could. That the inadequacies were lessened,
Yeah.
right, even removed, um, and b, the relationship started improving, right. And so I think the area in my life that I'm the most inadequate in is with family. Like that's And so that's why it's so easy for me to say sorry, because
Mm.
I'm so
Accept.
I'm so,
Tanggap mo
I
siya eh.
like it's true, right? Like, do I have proof of being a good dad? I think I'm a fun dad, right? I don't know if I'm a good dad,
Yeah.
right? I'm a strict dad, but so I mean, I remember my wife had an operation, so she was staying in the hospital. She came home, and then I was at work, right? And then my son goes, "Mama, let's play this game. I love this game. Me and Dad have been playing it, like." And then after playing one round, right, my wife was um, like, this is way too bloody, right? So I get home, and then my wife is like, did you play Mortal Kombat 11 with Elijah? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
why? What's up? It's like, are you nuts? Right? And it's like, now I have to tell him I'm like the bad mom. So you get it. Like, there's actually more evidence of me not being a very good family man than me being a good family man. And so what I did was I said, you know what? I need to figure this out because it matters a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about family, I think about two things: life and love, right? And when I think life, I think about health, right? And I think about basically like the physical life, and I think about sharing life, and I want to make sure that that the love at least is evident,
Yeah.
right? But one thing that I did really have to kind of like stamp out is um, showing love in life and evaluating love in life primarily from a material standpoint. So I wrote this article, right? A leader, not a prince; a partner, not a princess; a purpose, not a lifestyle, right? And because I was observing from a lot of my married men friends, right, was that I didn't really want to become like most of them, right? And at the same time, a lot of them were struggling with the same issues that I was. For example, right, like you know, everything should look good, right? You go to church on Sunday, you go to Bible study on a Wednesday, your kids go to a good school, you travel abroad twice a year, right? But it's like everything is like you have a decent job or even a good job. Your wife um, gets to go to a nice gym, right? All these things. But at the same time, then something would happen where they have like drug abuse or alcohol abuse, or have a affair or something like that. And so I was like saying, like, obviously, like something else is triggering all of these things, right? It's not simply that guys are horny. I mean, that's always been the case. It's nothing new, right? Um, the thing is more around. I realized was the conditions. Okay, what were the conditions that were just incentivizing or making it like pushing people to do all of these weird stuff, right? And I realized is that a lot of men, their role in life became chief lifestyle provider, right? In other words, they wake up every day and their sole purpose in life is to meet the lifestyle requirements of their family, right? And so imagine every day you wake up, that's your job, right? You know, you in your head, you're meant to be like like killing it. You could be doing so many things with your life, but every day your job is chief lifestyle provider. And you know what? Because that lifestyle is a moving target, you're never gonna be good at it, right? It's a bus you're never gonna
Yeah.
catch. And then you open Fortune or you read business magazines or you read the news or you look at Instagram or Facebook and you just see people killing it. Because obviously you just see their highlights, right?
Yeah.
And so you see guys, right? Like, it's like, wait a minute, that guy's a complete jerk, but he's winning. So what do the guys do? They either go, you know what? I need to be like
True.
that,
Yeah.
right? And or the good ones, they're like kind of suffer in secret and go and jack off in the bathroom, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and so because a lot of people don't realize is, the more a person gets like, and this girls have their own version of this, right? But
Mm.
but for at least for a guy, right? They get smaller and smaller. You keep shrinking them, and they have to turn now to other sources of validation, right? Because their main source of, and you think about it, that's how kind of like tricky it is because you want to give so much life and love to your family. Because that life and love is not defined, you now evaluate that life and love by your ability to provide. And because that that level of provision is not defined again, right? Someone posts something on Instagram about the dream vacation, and then you're like, oh, we should do this. All of a sudden, you should do this. Like, I didn't go to the US every year, right? I didn't take an international trip every year growing up, right? I mean, like, there's so many things that we've normalized for our families today that I didn't have growing up. And, I didn't turn out so bad, just a little bad, right? But not so bad, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had a happy childhood, right? So all of that to say, it's like, but all these material new requirements, right, are just adding and adding and adding and adding and adding. And because so what happens is, the guy gets super shrunk and they have to now rely on other things just to feed their ego because their ego is so tiny, right? And so now on the other side is like I think like for example, right, a lot of women are basically like like kind of like also boxed into their role, right? And in fact, a lot of good women think that their job is supposed to be some sort of like princess, supposed to be courted every day and all of those things, right? Like I've heard people tell me like happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Right? Really? Like, I mean, obviously I want my wife to be happy, but the purpose of my life is not to hit this moving target of another person's happiness.
Yeah.
It's not the purpose of my life. I wasn't born to make someone else happy,
Yeah.
right? Now, if they can't find a way to be happy with what they have, they'll never be happy. Nothing I can do can make them happy, right? And so people hate that, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
Or another thing is the idea that it's like they have so much gifts and skills that they can use to also provide, right? Or also maximize whatever the husband provides, right? But basically do other things more than just figure out how to spend the money so that the kids have fun, right? They have way more talent than that, right? They have way more contributions that they can make in that. And that's because the family's purpose is non-existent and the purpose of the union is a lifestyle. We get together to enjoy a lifestyle, to reach a lifestyle sweet spot. You look at Instagram, everything we like is a fake or, kind of like image of that lifestyle sweet spot,
Yeah.
right? We never like purpose, like that couple who decides to live with the squatters to feed them and serve them, right? No one wants that anymore,
Yeah.
even though that couple will probably be stronger as a marriage because they're very clear, they're happy doing what they came together for. But people who come together simply to hit some sort of lifestyle sweet
Yeah.
spot, just like anyone who joins a company to hit a lifestyle sweet spot, will never be really happy,
Yeah.
right? Because that lifestyle sweet spot will keep changing. When you're younger, right? Like if I can only make, let's say, 100 grand a month, I'm happy. right? And then it's like, if I can only make 250 grand a month, I'm happy. And if you're like, then you find out there are people making 1 million a month and you're not, it's
Yeah.
just never ending, right? It's like, um, it's the same, right? And so I think what's been helpful, at least for me, right? Because I can't control my wife, I can't control my
Yeah.
kid, I can only serve them, love them,
Yeah.
is to do my best, right? To do my best and to apologize when I'm wrong, okay? But also to accept that there are certain things I can't provide, and to just be very honest about, I can't provide that, but this I'm gonna make sure happens, and that's been very, very freeing. And to just realize that a lot of times when people think they need something, or when I feel inadequate, there's really no reason to feel inadequate, right? Like, there's no reason to feel inadequate that we don't do, a US, Europe, Asia trip every
Yeah.
year, right? There's no reason to do that. That's a normalized thing
Yeah.
that was great pre-pandemic, and then may not be possible post-pandemic in the near future or in the immediate future. But it's not wrong,
Yeah.
and it's not something to ruin the peace,
Yeah.
my peace, my family's peace over. Yeah. So I don't know if that made sense, right? But I
No,
think it starts out with, you know what, this is the purpose for this family. Like I tell my son, right? Do you know why you have to be strong? And he goes, why? Because you're going to carry your own burdens and other people's burdens, and the world needs strong people, right? And he's like, okay, dada, right? And then I'll be like, and so but if you're strong but you're not caring,
yeah.
you're just going to use other people, right? So you also have to be, and so it's like, and so really trying to brainwash the guy to think about, like, you should have a meaning, you should have meaning, you should, I guess, back to what we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
where even with your family you should be infusing meaning, not material,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In other words, it's like, you know versus, I love you, honey, thank you for this vacation, and then when you can't afford the vacation, what, right? Then you don't have sex anymore.
Yeah.
Then right, wonders why your internet history is always clean, right? Come on, man. Diba? Parang,
Actually, yun nga eh. Kasi I love how you talked about yun nga, yung inadequacies. Kasi I think that's a common theme, right? Like, that's something that, well, at least ako, I feel that a lot, bro. Like, really.
everyone feels it.
Yun na
Why do
nga.
you think everyone's posing, right?
Yun,
Yeah, everyone feels it.
yun na
Yeah.
nga. And, kasi I don't have, obviously, we don't have all the answers, right? So ako, ang ginagawa ko na lang, while I try to figure things out, while I'm on that journey, is number one, they know what I'm on that journey. So, parang hindi ko siya sinisecret. Hindi ko siya sinisecret na, hey, I'm a deeply flawed person, I have traumas and all of these issues, and I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, of course, I'm not saying it that way, but like, no, like you talked
Will
about,
you marry me after saying all of that?
di ba kasi parang, you said yung candor ko, and that's I think the difference with me now. I always talk a lot, but this time around, at this point in my life, I'm very open about talking about my flaws or my inadequacies or my mistakes and all of that. So, anyway, to my point lang of what I'm doing while I'm trying to figure things out, is being present.
Yeah.
So, parang, sabi ko nga eh, oh yeah, my son, galit sa akin yan, naiirita sa akin yan. I'm sure he wants to punch me at times and all of that, right? Well, I have something else to say about that. We can go into a ring anytime. But anyway, so, but ang ano ko dun talaga is,
That's no different from when you were that age, right?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why nga, I don't overreact with my wife. I was like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
like normal, boys will be
Yeah, yeah,
boys,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Sabi ko, hintayin mo.
And dude, I'm willing to bet that your kid is way more behaved than you were at that age.
By far, bro.
Yeah. So there's,
actually,
diba?
yun yung
Yeah.
issue ng wife ko. Kasi he's a great kid.
Yeah.
Typical lang, lazy. Yung usual, walang nothing crazy.
Yeah, nothing to, yeah.
So, pero
cry
ito,
about, yeah.
ito nga yung sinasabi ko. Parang, he can say that I'm tough. He can say that I'm all that. He can say I'm unreasonable. But one thing he can never say is I wasn't around
Yeah, you're there for him.
every step of the way. I don't take day offs, bro. Right? 24/7. Like, there are days that I really don't want to be here, man. Like, and they know it.
Yeah, like all of us.
And I
yeah.
say it. And I say it. But I say it also, I'm here. So parang, yun nga eh, kasi I think a lot of these concepts, it would be very hard for our kids, for our partners to understand, right? Without context, without really fully like talking about it this way. Because like the reality is, I don't have this kind of an intense conversation uh, with my wife or with my kids, right? So maybe that's
Yeah.
a different story altogether. What?
And yeah, I completely get what you're saying, right?
Oh,
Like, for example, if I told my wife, we need a mission, right? Stop telling me,
what's your
like
KPI?
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Doesn't work, right?
Pero yun na nga. But sorry, universally, you'll understand presence.
Yeah. And I think that's great. In fact, I want to combine it with and I want to combine it, meaning I want to practice what you just said, right? Because um, I'm always working. I mean, same with my dad, actually. He was always working, but his presence was felt, right? But I think like one thing I can definitely take away from this is improve on that,
Hmm.
you know. And I think where you can combine it with what I said was at the times where you are wrong, just say sorry.
Yeah.
Because I think it de-stresses the situation,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you know what? I don't have to get everything right. I just need to be present, right? What does that look like? And then second is, you know what? I don't have to get everything right. I just need to apologize when I'm wrong. Because in the same way, that's what I want my kid to learn. I
Yeah.
want my kid to know that when you make mistakes in life, and you will, and you should, because I want you out there being dynamic, not being some like scaredy cat,
Yeah.
right? Like calling out people who make mistakes.
Yeah.
They make no mistakes because they make no attempts, right? Um, and so when you make mistakes, I want him to really know that he can correct them, right? No matter what anyone says, he can correct it, right? That he doesn't have to give up, that the failure is not final. So I think that's great, right? And then if you combine it with what you just said about presence,
Yeah.
where you know that you can correct it because there's going to be someone here for you no matter what you do. I think that's extra powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that, man. I think like yeah, I just took a mental note because
Yeah.
yeah, like if you were to ask my kid, right, what's that? Like, I remember, I remember my wife was like, "Here's David's priorities: work, his hobbies, Elijah, God, then me." It's funny, but I was kind of like,
Yeah.
gotta work on that. To be fair, that was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
maybe 4 years ago, as soon as my kid was born. Yeah.
You know, I'm really loving our conversation, but we're now pushing 2 hours. So, I mean, maybe we need to do more episodes, like a part two of this rambling session. I mean, it's really really fun, bro. And but before I end this, I ask a series of questions. So the idea really, kasi diba runong is from karunungan, so it's wisdom. So we wanna, you've shared so much, and I'm sure I've if you took a mental note from me, I've taken so much already from what you were sharing.
Hey, but think about it. I take no responsibility for the results of your life.
Yeah. So anyway, at least so we can just, have that bits, no, the tips and tools that we can all use. Because again, Runong is about conversations on personal growth. So if there's anything that you can share, right, that could help us in that journey of ours, then we'll take it. But again, it's clear there's no responsibility on your part on what's gonna happen. So anyway, bro, first question. Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever received?
So much to choose from. I've been just so lucky. Maybe it's surround yourself with people who are better than you. Yeah, maybe that would be the like. Yeah, that's probably like the force multiplier in any life, right? Just being surrounded by people better than you.
Nice. What's the worst advice?
You're you're valued the way you are. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding. Alam mo,
Parang may ano pa, may parting and hit na. I don't know if it's like a specific thing, but like maybe advice on girls from men. You know,
I like that.
it always gets you into more trouble, right? Yeah.
Like, it never works. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
pare, you should do this. Ah, talaga? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the returns on that.
Or marriage advice from single men. That's even worse. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that category. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the you know.
What's the best thing that you've done for yourself this past year?
I've really been eating less calories. Like less than 1,500 calories a day on average.
Really?
Right, with all the running and it felt really good.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, no, I think it's been great. Like calorie restricting. Yeah,
Is it helping you also from your mental standpoint, your clarity? You think there's an impact?
I don't know. I don't know if it's helped my body either. I guess it's just like I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
it's more energy. Like
Okay.
before, I would love to take like a nap like on
Yeah.
weekends. So 2 to 4 p.m. Saturday, Sunday, I would usually be taking a nap. But now it's like I just feel like I have so much energy. Yeah.
Nice. What are the three things that got you to where you are now, or at least the state of maturity, happiness, fulfillment, contentment? What are the three things that stand out?
I think more than three things. I mean, it's just like I guess connected to my answer in part one, where I I've been very lucky to have good friends. You know, and I say lucky because on one end I don't really know what I did to get them. On
Mm.
another end, I think you also attract certain kinds of people, right? Like if you live a certain way, if you especially long-term friendships, right?
Yeah.
Long-term friendships, if you hated each other, you wouldn't keep those. But I've had really good long-term friendships. Um, and so, like when you ask me, I can think of, faces, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, my dad, right? Now I think my son, I mean, like the stakes that my son brings to my life really gets me focused. But I can rattle off so many names, right? Like of just people who have been a joy to work with. One of my favorite stories is so one of my he's become a really good friend, right? Like he's always full of insight also. So his name's Johannes Radsma. He brought in
Okay.
Anytime Fitness in the Philippines. But the way we met was we were both sitting in a coffee shop. He was talking to his like head of operations and like their HR thing, talking about outsourcing some of the requirements, and one of them was payroll. And I'm always eavesdropping. Like I'm always eavesdropping on everything, right?
So,
And then so I literally just told him, "Hey, I know this is gonna sound really creepy, but we can fix your payroll. I actually have a payroll company, right?" Then he was like, look at me like, I said, "Yeah, well, you know what? Here's my card. Google me, right? Like, like no worries, right? Like, don't mean to be creepy or eavesdrop, but that's really what we do, right?" And then so he did like message me, and he was like saying, "Hey, that was really like random, but so we had a look, and they've been clients, right, for a while. Our kids are roughly the same age. Our
mm.
sons, we both have sons. Um, we really enjoy just chatting with each other. Um, it was funny where when they did a deal, right? They did like this private equity group consolidated the Anytime Fitness in the region, and the way they met the PE guys, like the other side, right? There was two groups that did it, right? Was I was on the phone with him. I was on the phone with my other friend, right? Who was based in Singapore, saying, he's in private equity, right? Like, do you guys want to do a gym? And they're like, do you know any? We just sold our gym, in Vietnam. I'm like, yeah, no, let me call. So I'll call you back. So I called up my friend. Are you open to doing this? And yeah, that'd be awesome. And then that conversation, and then they took it to the next, and then it happened. And even close during the pandemic, right? So they were able to do it. So when I think about like best advice, right? It's like it's all of these different people, who you couldn't script this, like you couldn't predict this,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just trying to be of value to as many people as you can be, and in the process, you end up attracting people who also want to be of value,
Yeah.
right, to other people, um, and then they end up providing back. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've been very smart about life, but I'm lucky to have had really good relationships generally.
Yeah.
Obviously I've had bad relationships, right? I've also been like horrible in relationships. I mean, I think depending on who you meet, right? Like especially if they're an ex, I don't know if they'll probably not be too big a fan, right? But but all of that to say, in general, if yeah, if anything, what got me here is at least the relationships that have, stood the test of time. That's been awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, can't take credit for any of that.
You've been sharing so much, and usually my last question would be, I don't know if you're gonna answer this or it's actually tucked in already to what you've been sharing this entire time, no? But I'd ask for the sake, no? So, anong karunungan? If there's one thing that you could actually like pass on to us that you could confidently leave, I mean, and you put a name to it that yeah, David Bonifacio actually said this. What would that karunungan be?
I think if there's one thing I would really encourage people to do, like, I don't know if it's a skill, right? Um, it's just ignore the crowd, right? Just ignore the news, right? Ignore the noise, right? Like, cut through the noise, and for me, right, cut through the noise and make your own music, right? Like, cut through the noise everyone else is making, and make your own music. And I think, yeah, and I think that's what people need today. It's just so much noise. Like, turn it off, right? Turn it off. Stop listening to what everyone else is saying, right? There are very few good musicians, right? There's a lot of people, like, meh. Well, you're into music. You're way more into music than I am, right? But I don't know if that makes sense. But I think one reason why people don't have clarity is just that they're just listening to noise, right? They're not ignoring it, and then they ask for advice. Like that, my example, right? Kanina, where couple fighting, right? Husband just wants to have more sex with his wife. Wife just wants to have more financial security. Then what do? They go to like some pastor to give them marriage counseling. Yeah. Like, that will get him more sex and that will fix your financial issues, right? Like, but what it really does is it adds more noise.
Kaya hindi ka pastor, bro. Eh.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying it adds more noise, right? It's adding more noise, right? When people need some, like, people need to remove noise,
Yeah.
right? Not add noise. And then go back to, hey, why did we get into this in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Like, what can we do then? Yeah, so I think that would be it, right? Like, to ignore that, turn off those noise things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. David Bonifacio, for being so open, for gracing us with your presence.
Yeah.
That was a fun conversation, fun kwentuhan, with all those sarcasms in between. Love it. But before we go, would you want to promote anything? What are you into now? What are you bullish about?
What am I into now?
What's keeping you busy?
I'm very excited about 2022. Super excited. Super excited for companies, Bridge, the things we're investing in the future of work. Like, some of it's like, so we're like, whether it's work productivity, like Workbase, or let's say Payday, the payroll company, or Access, the one that's giving these low cost employee loans. I'm very excited about all of that. I'm also really excited to see like what other people are doing. And so, I've had really exciting conversations with, guys like Foxmont, who are doing Sinigang Valley in Poblacion, like Kaya founders. So Paolo, who used to, who founded, I think, Zalora. So all of these really exciting things happening. Like, you have guys that say like Gabby of YGG, the Yield Guild Games. I mean, these are like Filipinos, like, really being very dynamic despite the pandemic, despite bad markets and all of those things. So I'm very excited, right? So I don't know if I'm promoting anything specifically, but I just hope that a lot of people will realize that there's like a rebel alliance, right, where people are like resisting the bad news and the stupid policies and like this is doom and gloom, and saying like, like, we need to create the future we want, and we need to work together to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, we need to be the source of our own optimism, right? Like that future. Again, regardless of what people say or what the news would say, what they call
And
it.
what's the worst case, right? What's the worst case?
Yeah, we're in a shit show anyway, right? I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest,
The worst case is we're dead, right? It's the worst case. And once you're dead, you're not going to remember anything beyond that, right? That's literally the worst case. Yeah. Like, people say, what if people say bad things about you when you're dead? I won't know I'm dead. It's a very freeing thought, to be honest.
No, yeah, liberating. So yeah, salamat, man.